All right, welcome everybody. Just making sure we're all in the right room. We've had the title up, I'm sure you've seen it. So we're going to be talking about classification and understanding the best practices in classifying our sensitive data, a topic near and dear to many of our hearts. Now, before we jump into the topic, I want to talk a little bit about the world that we all live in today. So here in 2017, the cloud has really transformed the way that we work and we do business. Before, we worked in very siloed products and very siloed environments. It was hard to share data, and therefore, you didn't have to worry so much about inadvertent overexposure nearly as much as we do today. But today, with the cloud and with the increase in productivity, comes some increases in risks as well. 41% of employees say that working in this environment, working in mobile apps, has changed the way that they work. Now that's in a world where year over year, some estimates show that data is increasing at a rate of 50% per year, which is pretty staggering. That's a lot of data every year. Now with all of that data, we're working with it more and more. 58% of people say that they have accidentally shared sensitive information with the wrong person. I've been the recipient of some of that. I've seen that happen firsthand. And 85% of organizations are keeping sensitive information up in the cloud, where it's easy to share. Now finally, with all of these risks considered, 88% of companies feel that they cannot meet their data protection needs without some kind of automated identification or classification to help them in this just staggering growth of sensitive data. So how do we do that? How do we protect our sensitive data when there's just so much of it and it's being shared all the time, sometimes appropriately and sometimes not? Really the key is that we have to have some help, and that's why we build some of these features like classification to help assist with this. Now classification as a feature allows you to really define what is sensitive to you, define what is important to your organization, and help you identify where it lives, where it's traveling, and how people are using it, and protect it accordingly. Now this capability has largely been focused on Office 365 in the past. But as many of you have seen in sessions this week and in recent news and things, Microsoft has a lot of different information protection solutions and technologies out there. Now some of those are a little different. There's some differences between them, and classification is one of those areas that was largely different in the past. Now this capability that we talk about today, classifying sensitive data, we're turning into a platform capability that works across all of our different solutions here at Microsoft to help you simplify the task of identifying your sensitive data, reduce the cost of identifying it and protecting it, and prevent the cost of losing it. And of course, this applies beyond just Office 365. So just a quick raise of hands. How many people in this room are the IT decision maker or compliance admin for your organization? Okay, quite a few. How many of you have used Office 365 DLP? Okay. And how many are using some other solution? Okay. So what we're going to be talking about today is applicable across a variety of technologies. And we've built this capability in 4 real platform pieces, or pillars, you could say. The first is detection and classification. Those are very tightly related. We need to identify what is sensitive, figure out how we protect that data. And protection is our third pillar. And fourth is we want to monitor that data. So once we've found it or protected it or done something with it, we want to give you insight into how that data continues to be used, how it's been protected, where your risks are, so you understand your compliance posture and your security posture across your organization over time. And now this applies to your devices, to your cloud storage, as well as on-premise deployments, not just in the cloud. Now, speaking of this platform we're building and all the different solutions, here's a view that may look a little bit familiar for those of you who have gone to some of the other sessions, like the one on Tuesday where we talked about information protection across Microsoft. There's a number of different solutions and technologies that many of you use today that will all apply here. So who does not recognize or does not use any of these technologies on the screen? Okay, so nobody. That's good. So this will all be relevant material to you. We're going to focus primarily on the detection and classification portion of this. This is kind of the beating heart of information protection. We have to know what to protect. We have to be able to identify it in order to do something with that. So this brings us to what is classification beyond just detection. Simply put, classification is just making an assessment about your data. Either making an assessment of it as a whole, what is this document, what is it related to, or identifying individual components or patterns within that document, identifying if there's financial information inside, or if it contains healthcare identifiers, like medical record numbers or your social security number. Now, to illustrate this, I want to just walk through an example. Now, picture data that lives anywhere in one of your existing data repositories, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. It doesn't matter much where this lives. You have data somewhere. The first thing that we do is we extract the content from that. So it doesn't matter if it was a document, an email, a chat, a log on a server, whatever that is, we extract the content from that first. And that gives us just a raw normalized form that we can work on. Now from here, you can see just a sample of extracted text from our imaginary document here. And it looks like there's some interesting information there. It's talking about some kind of interesting things. We're going to use this to highlight just a canonical example of how classification works at a high level. And then we're going to deep dive into how you can use that capability in your organization for things specific to you. So the first thing that we do is we're going to notice that there's a number here. This is a familiar pattern. We're going to look for a bunch of patterns. And out of the box, we have 82 of them. We call them sensitive information types. And when we find one of those patterns, like this number, the first thing that we do is try to validate it. Now, don't worry about the math. I'm just trying to impress you a little bit. That's a checksum. This is a way of just testing that, in this case, a credit card number is validly formatted. So this could very well be a credit card number. But if you imagine there's a lot of 15, 16-digit numbers out there in the world, and given enough of them, you will have something that passes a checksum, even though it may not be a credit card number. So in addition to looking or to validating the number, we're going to look for other things, keywords, other patterns around that number. In this case, we have some expiration dates. And we use all of the information that we find around it to make some kind of verdict of what that thing is. And when we make that verdict, we also return what we call a confidence level. This is just a score of how sure we are this is not a false positive and that this is a valuable match for you. Now you'll notice a second number on the screen. This passes the sniff test when you look at it, but when we actually evaluate this, we find that it doesn't pass the checksum. So even though it looks like a credit card number, either someone fat-fingered it, or it wasn't actually a credit card number, it just happened to look like one. In either case, this isn't a usable asset in case it gets leaked, and therefore we would not consider that a match. So these are some general principles that we follow, and no matter where your data lives, this process we just talked about is consistent. So if we're talking about Azure, if we're talking about Office, if we're talking about working inside of one of Office clients like Word or PowerPoint or Excel, the process is the same. We take data, we extract the content from it. Once we have it in that form, we can process it, look for any of the sensitive info that you have stated that you care about. And from that, we use the data that we classify, we use that output to make some kind of intelligent decision about how to protect this data. And everything you see in that cycle is configurable by you. So you can decide exactly what you want to do with your data. Now we're going to deep dive into that data classification piece. We just talked about some of the principles of how this works at a high level. I want to start talking about how you can take the power of this and apply it to your specific organization. Now, we have a number of configuration options for you, and they range from very simple, that require no domain knowledge or very little domain knowledge, to more complex, but also very powerful, giving you full control over our capabilities. Now, some of those simple controls, just to start off with, include things like our policy UX, where you can make some basic but powerful decisions about what you want to match by specifying different confidence levels or numbers of things that you want to match or what you want to match in the first place. Additionally, and this is something that we have recently released in the last couple months, the ability for you to group different requirements and build different logic inside of those requirements to meet more complex situational needs. So I'm going to just show you really quickly here what that actually looks like. Oh. My laptop thought I abandoned it. I'm waiting while it scans my face. Okay. So if we jump in here, this is the Security and Compliance Center. How many people have seen this before? A lot of people. Awesome. So this is inside of Office 365. This is the control pane for all of your policies across Office. And even some of our partner products, like MCAS or Azure Information Protection, they can leverage some of the same capabilities that we have built in here. So even if you haven't used the Security and Compliance Center, I would encourage you to pop it open and give it a try. In here, we're going to dive into the data loss prevention policy section. I'm just going to highlight some of those high-level controls to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do. So first, let's just go in here and create a policy. We get some kind of pre-canned options. So in a click or two, you can get going. I'm going to select HIPAA because it illustrates some of the things we're talking about. And let me just click through here to get to the settings. And here we get a view of what this is actually matching. Now I'm going to go into the configuration view. And here, if I can scroll just right. It's a little cold in here, and the dexterity of my fingers is not so good. I hope I'm not the only one shivering in this room. So here is the policy view, specifically where we define the kinds of data classifications that we care about. And we talked about some sensitive types a minute ago. And you can see here different sensitive types that we have selected. Now up top, we're looking for PII identifiers. And that's a group that I labeled myself. And that includes things like social security numbers, drug enforcement numbers, et cetera. Now you can see that there's a second group of things down here that we're also looking for. And I can control some of the logic between those as well as within them. And down below, we're going to look for some medical terminology. So this is just a very basic stepping stone to helping you get started with identifying medical content. But you also notice some different configuration options here. And some of this UX has only recently rolled out. So if you haven't gone in and configured policies in the last couple of weeks or months, you may not have seen any of this. But if I come in here, I can decide which confidence levels I want to match on. I can change them. I'm going to put that back. Or different counts, only matching if there's a minimum or a maximum number of them, so I can bucketize the actions I want to take. And you get a bunch of controls in here that are very simple. Now, I mentioned data classifications, not just sensitive types. I want to show you something else that we have recently rolled out, and that's integration with labels. So how many people here use Azure Information Protection labels? Okay, a couple hands. How about data retention labels in Office 365? Okay, about the same. So a label is a way for you to just tag a document and apply some policy-like settings to that document, keeping it for a certain period of time, or if you're in Azure Information Protection, applying RMS or taking other kinds of actions with it. Now you'll notice there's some overlap with what we're talking about there, where a user has manually tagged something, manually told the system what that document is. It's a tax document, or it's highly confidential, or something of that nature. Well, just like a sensitive type, we can now detect those and trigger off of them in the UX, or in our policy, rather. So here I'm going to go ahead and add a label. I've created a couple labels in my organization. I'm going to also add a medical record to that. So now what my policy says, if I find either a social security number or a drug enforcement number, or if the label is, or the document is labeled as a medical record, and if it contains any terminology from the lexicons that we ship out of the box, then I'm going to call this a match. I'm going to pause right there and focus on these lexicons for just a second. This is something, another new feature that we have recently rolled out, just in the last couple of weeks. So these are large dictionaries that are produced. These particular sets are produced by the Centers for Disease Control and are an industry standard for helping identify medical content. But beyond just shipping these out of the box, we've also enabled you to build and use your own custom dictionaries far beyond what you were able to do before in Office 365. It's actually a 10x increase in what we have supported. Now I'm going to jump back out of this, come back to the deck, and we'll continue on our journey a little bit. Now, those were some of the simple options that we talked about, simple configurations. But what about the more powerful stuff? How many people in here have ever created or modified one of our built-in sensitive types? Anyone? Okay. So quite a few people. This is a capability that allows you to take something that we include out of box, take our credit card number, take our social security number, whatever it is, and tune it, modify it to meet your specific requirements. Maybe we're looking for keywords that you don't care about or that your organization uses differently. Maybe we don't support your region's language as deeply as you would like. You can modify anything that we have built to include those things and change it to your heart's content. Now that one's a little more simple. You can export our definitions and start from there. That final box, though, that's really starting almost from scratch, creating your own sensitive type. Maybe for your, I don't have my lanyard on, but your speaker number, or attendee number, or employee number. There's a variety of things that you may want to protect. Now, I want to help you be able to use those things so that in your organization, if we don't ship something out of box, you can still identify it and protect it. And this same capability that we're talking about here applies not just in Office again, but your labels use it if you're in Azure, or retention labels use this. If you're using MCAS, our CASB solution, it also uses the same classification technology. So this is our platform that's really supporting a number of different areas with these same capabilities and principles. So we come back to classifying data. I just want to show a quick example again, but tie it back to some of the principles that we need to create a sensitive type. So we're going to start here with a form or a document. Now in this document, it's been filled out by some medical staff. It's an evaluation form. So let's pull out some data from that just as an example. And this is the same process we showed just a minute ago, but I want to put some faces to names for the XML that we're going to generate in just a second. This is much simpler than it may seem. So first of all, we have this number in the middle, and this is our medical record number. This is the thing that we want to identify, that we're trying to catch and protect. What the pattern that we're trying to identify is always called the ID match, or identification match. So in the XML, when you create a custom sensitive type, you will denote what you're looking for with that element. Now, like we mentioned, we're going to look for other things around it, keywords, other patterns, etc. The area around that number in which we look for those things is called the proximity window. Now, as you can imagine, the closer something is to your number, statistically, the more relevant it is. That proximity window is totally configurable to you. By default, we set it to about 300 characters on either side, but you can change that to whatever your needs are, or you can set it to infinite. Just say ignore proximity altogether. If I find certain things anywhere in my document, I want it to match. Well, inside of there, we're going to look for those keywords and other kinds of evidence. Any additional or corroborative evidence we call a match. So in the XML, that's what you will mark it as. So together, I want to build a sensitive type really quickly with you. How many people in this room have any familiarity with using or writing XML? Okay, quite a few. So let me jump back over. Excellent. And let's open up Visual Studio, my IDE of choice. So here we have a pretty empty template. Now, when we create sensitive types, we wrap them in what's called a rule package. This is just a little wrapper for you to upload data into our system. You can stick as many sensitive types in here as you would like. It's just an organizational tool. And inside of this rule pack, there's some metadata that we define just to say what this is when we come back and look at it later, if we want to remove things or modify them later. These are just reminders for us. Then down below, we have the meat of the sensitive type. We have the actual definition, where we'll put our requirements. And then we have the localized strings. This is what will show up inside of your UX, matching the locale that you're in. So to get going here, I'm just going to replace some of this. Whoops.
Could you increase the zoom of your font?
Sure. Thank you. Is that big enough, or should I go bigger?
Bigger.
Bigger. How about that? All right. Everyone in the back okay? Everyone can see? Perfect. Thank you, sir. So we've just filled out some info in this rule pack that says what this thing is. And we can modify this to be whatever we would like. Now down here, I want to focus on this portion. This is where we're actually going to define our sensitive type. So here I've just quickly thrown in some XML for a medical record number, the number that we showed just a minute ago. And there's a few things I want to call out just to help us get going. So the first is the sensitive type itself. When we're looking for individual pieces inside of a document, it's called an entity. We're identifying individual entities in the document. And each entity comes with an identifier. This allows you to use it different places. This is also what links to the localized strings down below. And of course, like we just talked about, there is the size of the proximity window that we want to set. Now I can set this to 10,000 if I want. I can set it to infinite. I'm going to leave it at 300 because the closer the evidence is to the number itself, the more relevant it tends to be. Now inside of here, you'll notice that there's a couple different sections called patterns. So patterns are different versions or different sets of requirements for any particular sensitive type. Now the reason that we have this feature is there are people in this room who may be very risk averse, and let's suppose you're trying to protect social security numbers. If you see anything that looks remotely like a social security number, you want to stop it and block it and not allow it to go out. But for a lot of people, that might be a bit heavy-handed. They have a lot of 9-digit numbers or other things that look like social security numbers. And so if it looks like one, they may still want to know about it. So they might create one version of their definition for something that just looks like a medical record number and set a low confidence level for that match. So if you find something, in this case, the ID match, which again is the pattern itself we're looking for, is just a regular expression for a medical record number. There are no keyword requirements or anything else. So we give it a low confidence score. Now in your policy, you can tune that count and confidence to do different things. So you could say if I find a match for medical record number that is, let's say, less than 75% confidence, I just want you to notify me as the admin. I don't want you to block work or force encryption or anything like that. But if I find a medical record number that matches this set of requirements, where we have different keywords, we even have some exclusions, I'm pretty sure that this is a medical record number, in which case I definitely don't want matches with this confidence level or higher to go outside of my organization. So I'd set another DLP policy that triggers off of that confidence level. Now, all of our out-of-box sensitive types come with multiple confidence levels, or most of them do. And this is just a capability that you can use inside of your policies, or when you create your own sensitive types, you can create this, this level of richness to them as well to take advantage of in your system. So let's just kind of walk through this one by one. So again, the ID match, what we're looking for is a regular expression for medical record number. We'll write it in just a second. Now, this any block is really saying or. If I see any of the things inside of here, then I'm going to match. So in that case, a keyword, at least one, from a medical record number, or a keyword from this other list called keyword record. And I want to find at least one. Now, I can change this. I can make that 10. I can say I want at least 3 of these to come from this particular keyword list. And then let's say change that to 4. So you can configure this all you want. I'm going to back those out. Oops, too far. And then down below, you'll notice we have a second or. And this is just to tell us if I find a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 0, in other words, if I find any of these things, I want to negate this match altogether. So if we find any keywords from MRN exclusions, negate this match. Don't match at all. This is to help us reduce false positives. So let's go ahead and build our regular expression as well as the keywords in here. Oops. So here we have 2 keyword lists. So the first is keyword records, the second is keyword MRN, and of course we have our regular expression that we use here. The regular expression, if you're not familiar, is just a way of saying what characters to match on to find patterns. Here we're going to look for either at least 2 letters or numbers, followed by 6 or 7 numbers. So medical record number for me in my organization, that's what they look like. It may look different for you, so you can modify them. And then we have some simple keywords here. Now, the first is very straightforward. We're just looking for a bunch of different terms. The second is a little bit more interesting. And of course, these terms are all related to record numbers. But this second list is a little bit more interesting. There's a little more richness in this that I want to just kind of pause on for a second. So first, there's case sensitivity. You can enforce that. So pretty basic stuff. If you have abbreviations or acronyms and they're always capitalized, it's a good way of helping you reduce false positives. But the probably more interesting one here is the second match style. These are all match style equals word, which means as you're looking at a language like English, where words are separated by spaces, these keywords will match only when words are separated by spaces. So if you had the word, a word that is found in compound words as well, so for example, av, the abbreviation for avenue, you would not find a match inside of the word have, as in to own, because there is no space between H and AVE. But if you set the match style to string, this allows you to match on substrings. Now, you of course want to be careful with this because, as we just talked about, there are words found inside of other words, and this will match them. But sometimes this is useful when that's not generally the case. So for example, if this capability wasn't there, I would have to have 2 terms to look for medical record number. one to cover the case where they put a period at the end of number, which is abbreviated, and one where they don't. Instead, I can just use a string match style, and this would match it whether there's a period or not. And that's not a likely pattern to find inside of other words. Now, the other thing we need to add is our exceptions. So we may turn on this sensitive type and find that we're matching other kind of record numbers. There are other records out there with 9-digit identifiers in them. We don't want to catch those, for example. So we create another dictionary that is allowing us to identify those and negate the match if we find them. And that was this guy right here. So all of this looks great. This is pretty cool, but I want to show one more thing that we have released since the last time we talked. And that is the ability to use actual large dictionaries. So we talked about that a minute ago with the medical dictionaries. This is how you build a large dictionary of your own inside your organization. Now, to save a little bit of time, I have already uploaded one. I'll show you my dictionary. So this is a dictionary of medical procedures and treatments. There are about 30,000 of them in here. As you can see, some of them are quite long. Now, lest there be anything embarrassing in there, I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to show you the dictionary that I created. So I just used the new DLP keyword dictionary commandlet that we have recently rolled out. This is in all of your tenants today. And here is the treatments dictionary that I created earlier. So I want to create a sensitive type that looks for any terms from that dictionary. So what I'm going to do is create another entity. And this one is only going to be one pattern. I'm just looking for at least one match from this dictionary. And here I have this ID ref. Now up here, the ID ref was the name of the regular expression or the name of the keyword list or whatever it is that we have defined here inside of this XML file. For a dictionary, you created that in a commandlet. So I'm going to grab the identifier out of that commandlet and come drop it in here. And I also need to update my localized strings to account for my dictionary as well. So here we've got that guy, and now I'm going to save this. Oops, save as. And I'll just call it MRN. Okay. Well, now I want to go upload my new sensitive types into my tenancy so that I can use them in my policies and other things. So, oops. I will use the new DLP sensitive information type rule package commandlet. Yes, that is a mouthful. Yes, I don't expect you'll have to type that very much, and I'll show you why in a second. And then we are just grabbing that XML file and encoding it into Unicode to upload. So nothing too fancy here. So I'm going to let that guy upload, and then I'm going to jump back over here, and I'm going to refresh my session, and then hop over here into the classifications node. So when I jump in here, I come in here to my sensitive types, and if I scroll down, oh, too far. There we go. We can see my medical record number and my medical treatments that we can now go use in our policies. So this is a capability that anyone in here can go do today. We have many articles online that walk you through end-to-end how to do this in different scenarios. And of course, this video will be up on YouTube in a couple weeks for you to follow along if you'd like. But let's continue our conversation. We showed a couple different methods of detection here, but there's a whole bunch of richness in these sensitive types we didn't have time to cover. Now, we talked about regular expressions and functions and all kinds of other things, but There's a bunch of other stuff that you can go do. One of the things I didn't mention here is that all matches now are unique. So if you have your taxes with your social security number in 8 different pages, it'll only come back as one match for all 8 instances of your sensitive type. If you require a certain number of keywords, those keywords are counted uniquely. So that was a change we made based on feedback from this room last year. And the grouping logical operators, negative evidence, et cetera, as well. Now there's a few things that are on the roadmap I want to talk about really quickly. How many people in this room use exact data match in your organizations today? Anybody? Cool. So exact data match is a request we've heard from many, many folks, particularly in the healthcare community. I'll dive into this in just a minute, but I want to call out that this is something we're actively working on and bringing in the near future. We're also working on some advanced fingerprinting and bringing that capability out of Exchange and across the other areas as well. And building in some machine learning assistance for our classification. We just did everything manually inside of the XML, and there's obviously some shortcomings with that. You wrote the regex yourself. You had to identify the pattern yourself. You had to identify the keywords, all those kinds of things. We're doing some longer-term work here to make that automatic. So you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry so much about it. We'll help you with that. And in addition, when we're matching data, getting better detections, getting smarter about that, understanding users' intent in using data, all those kinds of things. So diving a little bit deeper into exact data match, everything that we just did was general detection. We were looking for an 8 to 9 digit number with some keywords that seem relevant around it. But exact data match takes DLP or classification from the other angle. And that is, you can come to us and tell us, here's the data I care about, only match when you find these values. And where that might be useful is if you care about customer data, or perhaps your own HR data, and you're less interested in people's personal documents they upload to OneDrive for Business, or less interested in, obviously, potential false positives in your organization. This allows you to hook up your HR database or your database of customer info and only match when you find either individual values there or multiple values. And not just multiple values, but multiple values of the same record or same person. So here's a quick example. We have 2 people with their social security numbers, our good friends Sarah Davis and John Doe, and 2 documents with their data inside of them. Now you'll notice that in that first document, that is Sarah's actual social security number. But in that second document, even though John and that social security number are found in that table, they don't belong to the same person. But with a generic detection like we just built in our rule pack, either of these would match because we're just looking for, let's say, a social security number. But in the case of exact data match, where you've defined what you care about and different elements about that person, will only match if you find the name and the social security number for that person. And you can, of course, configure what data in that table must be found and in what different orders and patterns and things. So this is something we're working on that will be available next year. Now, this begs the question, where are you storing PII? How are you doing this? Is it performant? Do you have to hit my database every time you want to find this data? The answer is no. You set up a connection to your data, or you can upload files, your choice. And we just create fingerprint digests of that data. It's a one-way hash digest, so it's not the full data, and is no way reproducible, and only store those. Then you use sensitive types in your policies to identify, say, a social security number, which we would then hash and compare against this database. So no actual PII is stored at all. Now beyond this, we just did a bunch of work in XML. I see some heads nodding over here. XML is not my favorite thing in the world. In fact, I hate it. So we're building some UX on top of this. Now, these capabilities have seen massive adoption. The number of people using custom sensitive types across Office and now Azure and MCAS has increased far beyond what we had expected it to, and is continuing to grow at a shocking rate, despite being in XML. Now, for all of the users of this technology and this capability and all of the potential users of this, we want to make this easier. So we're building some UX on top of this to make this easy. So now bringing this full loop, as we wrap this up, everything we talked about applies to all of these different technologies across Microsoft. Some of them are using it today. Some of them will use it in the future. But this platform that we're building is available across those different products as they come online and begin to take advantage of that. So I want to thank all of you guys for coming and open the floor up to questions. It's all yours, yeah.
I've been, probably with a lot of other people, struggling with the DLP in O365. I just implemented OME for encrypting email, and I discovered that SCC DLP and EOP DLP can't see each other and don't talk to each other. And of course, not too long ago, all of the PowerShell commandlets that were used in EOP for creating these DLP things got moved over into the SCC. Do you have any knowledge of the I guess, roadmap for eventually unifying all of that? And am I going to have to recreate everything over in the Compliance Center that I've got in Exchange now?
Yeah, great question. So you're talking about the Exchange Admin Center, right? Huh? The Exchange Transport Rules in the Admin Center? Yeah, so there is a plan, a lot of it is underway right now, to migrate those Exchange capabilities over into the Security and Compliance Center. This gentleman right here is the guy you'll want to talk to about the roadmap and specifics of that, but the answer is yes, there is a plan, and it's happening right now, actually. Yeah.
I just had a quick question about the DLP policies in terms of like the recipient domain that our senders will be sending to. I haven't seen this capability, so I'm not sure if I'm missing it somewhere. Is there a way that we could restrict it so that like HIPAA regulations are checked in the DLP when we send to external senders, but have an exception for a specific domain they're sending to? We have a lot of health users at our university who communicate with Tampa General, and they need to communicate with HIPAA, confidential information, but we don't really want that going to anyone else.
Yeah, I get it. So you don't want to block it entirely. There's a few people who need that capability.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, so you haven't missed it. That is something that's being built, that is coming. And that's actually part of that last gentleman's question. That's part of the migration of capabilities to Security and Compliance Center.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
Right over here.
Oh, didn't know there was a second row of mics.
Yeah, sorry. So you talked about fingerprinting in your slide. I don't know that you defined what you mean by that. And maybe I missed it if you did.
Sure. So we didn't dive too much into that. I'm happy to stay after and talk about specifics if you want. At a high level, fingerprinting for us is taking a document that you use across your organization many times. So for example, an HR form, a patent application,
so this is background, the background pattern of a form?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then being able to detect variations of that form as it's filled out, modified, et cetera. Yes, sir.
Hi. We're in the process of migrating most of our sensitive data type from McAfee DLP onto Office 365. And one of the challenges, even so you show it, is regarding the GUI, going to an XML. Even so, you made it sound very practical and very smooth. Our security team is having a hard time because we have 60 plus custom dictionary and sensitive data types specific to us. What timeline are we looking at for UX? Or?
Very early next year.
Okay, so not this year.
No, not this year. but very early next year.
Okay. And do you maybe happen to know if there is third parties that help into the translation between some?
Yeah, there are some software vendors that do that. There are a bunch of people at Microsoft Consulting Services that do it as well. If you want to talk just after the meeting, I'd be happy to give you some of that contact info.
Would be great, thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem. Yes, sir.
Hi, so one of the things we've been asked to do by our security department as we migrate from semantic DLP to Office 365 is to use DLP to catch leakage of usernames and passwords. So if you've got, if someone leaks 1,000 usernames and passwords from a particular domain. So what I did was we wrote a custom regex. I got it matching absolutely fine on list of domains and a list of common terms for username and password. That was fine. But it only, no matter how many I put in an email, it only ever picked it up as one entry. The uniqueness thing you mentioned, will that resolve that? Because if I've got if you think of how a password leak would be, you'd have 1,000 domain X, 1,000 times usernames and passwords.
Yeah. Yeah, so that uniqueness issue addresses exactly that scenario.
Brilliant.
So what we would have normally or historically counted as distinct matches for every single one, we now dedupe those matches.
Right, so the thing is I want it to match 1,000 times and hit the high rule. What was happening was if I put in domain X 1,000 times and username and password 1,000 times, because it matched once, that was it. What I wanted to do is hit the high count and say, you've got 1,000 in there.
Even though it's the same one over and over and over?
No, it was different usernames and passwords, but the trigger was the domain.
Oh, okay. No, so the uniqueness only applies to, so in this case, the username and password, that would have been detected by classification. Classification results get deduped. The domain would still be considered as unique across those. So if you're looking for domain X plus this username or password, you would still get 1,000 matches as long as those username and passwords are unique.
Okay.
I thought you meant that there were a ton of people that have, password 1 or 1234 as their password, and you want to dedupe those out.
No. Okay. I might hang around afterwards if you've got 2 minutes.
Please, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on up. They're giving me the farewell music, but I'll come find you too. Thank you, guys.